Another question was received, this time from our dear friend Jared Wignall. Jared, my dear friend, it's always great to hear from you. And you say, what films would you love to see be in the Criterion Collection? Either films that have been part of the Criterion Collection previously on Laserdisc and or DVD, but not on Blu-ray, as the licensing ran out years before Blu-ray came about, or films that have not been in the Criterion Collection. So yes, to be or not to be, that is the question. Or to be in the Criterion Collection or not to be in the Criterion Collection, that is the question. This is one that I made a video about some years back, in fact, films I'd like to see in the Criterion Collection. And ever since then, of course, I've always wondered about titles that could be in the collection or not. And it's one of those great things to talk about and speculate, and it's also a way to hear about what others have to say about this, because it also is, I think, a great window into what people's tastes are in cinema. So, great question, Jared. Thank you. Now, if I had to answer it right now, based on my own feelings now, again, it could change depending on when you ask it and when I answer it. So, right now, my answer could be different than how I might have answered it yesterday or how I might answer it tomorrow or any other day of the week. But right now, if I had to answer it, I would give a couple of examples. And this isn't exclusive. These are just examples, and there are many others that I'd love to see in the Criterion Collection. But just to give some boundary to my response, I'll provide two filmmakers. The first is Theo Angelopoulos. And the reason why I mention Angelopoulos is, in fact, right now I am currently watching or rewatching his films for purposes of trying to put together something for this channel, some kind of discussion series of videos on the works of Angelopoulos. And so his films are on my mind quite a lot these days. And I'm also I also comment that it's very difficult to get a number of his films on physical media at the moment. And therefore, it would be so fantastic if the works of Angelopoulos, to whatever degree, it could be one film, two films, hopefully all of his films, but any works by Angelopoulos, it would be great to see them in the Criterion Collection. The film that I think gets a lot of say, critical attention, one of his most critically regarded masterpieces. I mean, his whole career is essentially a career of masterpieces. But for example, I've mentioned it before, but I'll say it again. The film The Traveling Players. The Traveling Players. I am every time I see this film, I am left stunned. I am left stunned by the way that history is portrayed, how time is some kind of, it's presented in this wonderfully amorphous way that is both realistic and magical. And there are also ways that the film is focused in on a sense of historical drama, but is also relying on very exceptional, almost experimental techniques of cinema. And it is an epic work. It is so emotionally powerful. And so The Traveling Players would be maybe an example of what I would love to see of the works of Angelopoulos in the Criterion Collection one day, hopefully, if it could happen. And especially now, too, because I understand that that film, for example, is not so easy to get one's hands on, say, a physical media release. So that would be one that I could suggest, or that what I would say I would love to see in the Criterion Collection. Another filmmaker is Edward Yang. Now, I've mentioned Edward Yang on this channel a number of times before, and I am so much enamored by his works. I love his works dearly, and I've been able to see his feature films, but I know too that a number of his films are at the moment either out of print in physical media form or very, very difficult to come by. So I'd love to see, for example, That Day on the Beach, or Confucian Confusion, or Mahjong, And also, maybe also the film Terrorizers, although I think Terrorizers is maybe a little bit, relatively speaking, easier to get one's hands on than those earlier titles that I mentioned. But any of those titles, if we could get a Criterion release, or any release from any label for that matter, I would be so over the moon. I'd be so happy to see that. But fingers crossed, one day, my friends, one day, if that could happen, then really I would be so ecstatic, and it would be a great day of personal celebration. Let me put it that way. But in any event, my friends, Jared's question was a great one. And how would you answer that question? So what films would you love to see be in the Criterion Collection? If you have any thoughts about this, please feel free to let me know in the comment section below. And Jared, my dear friend, our dear friend, thank you so much, as always. It's great to hear from you, and let's talk again very soon. Jared, my friend, thank you, and cheers.